A poor, homeless young man from the street prevents a robbery against a lady. The latter changes his life forever. Thomas was running desperately on the bustling sidewalk of Paris when he saw the man snatch the handbag from the white-haired lady. Without hesitation, he pushed the attacker with all the strength his meager 16 years could muster. The thief stumbled, dropped the bag, and ran off between the cars stuck in traffic. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked as he returned the brown leather bag to the woman's trembling hands. Madame Helene Dubois looked at the boy in worn clothes and a faded gray sweatshirt. Her blue eyes filled with tears she couldn't explain. There was something in this young face that deeply troubled her. "Thank you, my child," she murmured in a choked voice. "What's your name?" "Thomas, ma'am, but there's no need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." The boy's simple and honest answer made Helene's heart beat faster. She opened her bag with trembling hands, looking for some money to reward him. But Thomas was already walking away. "Wait, let me give you something." "No need, ma'am. I didn't help for the money." And with those words, Thomas disappeared into the crowd, leaving Helene motionless on the sidewalk with a strange feeling in her chest. Something about this encounter had awakened old memories she had been trying to forget for years. For the entire following week, Helene couldn't get the boy out of her thoughts. She asked her driver, Pierre, to pass by the same spot every day at the same time. And there he was, always at the red light on the Avenue de Champs-Élysées, selling candy to the stopped motorists. "Madame Dubois, would you like me to stop?" Pierre asked, noticing her fixed gaze on the boy. "No, not yet," she murmured without taking her eyes off Thomas. She watched him from a distance, hidden behind the tinted window of the car. The boy worked under the burning sun, running nimbly between the cars. His clothes were simple but clean. There was a dignity in each of his gestures, an upbringing that contrasted with his situation. On Thursday, Helene finally found the courage. She got out of the car and approached him. "Thomas," she called softly. The boy turned, surprised to recognize the lady from the robbery. "Oh, ma'am. Sorry, I don't know your name." "Helene. Madame Dubois." "Madame Dubois, how are you? Were you able to sort out the problem with the papers that were in your bag?" The sincere concern in the boy's voice moved Helene again. How many street kids would care about a stranger's problems? "Everything is fine. Thank you." "Listen, I brought you this," she said, holding out a 50-euro bill. Thomas looked at the money and shook his head. "I told you it wasn't necessary, Madame Dubois. I work honestly here. I don't want charity." "It's not charity, my child. It's a thank you. And I already thanked you by helping you. You don't owe me anything." The hurt pride in the boy's voice surprised Helene. She insisted 2 more times, but Thomas walked away, visibly uncomfortable. The green light released the traffic, and Helene had to return to the car, leaving the boy in the middle of the street. Dear listeners, if you like this story, please leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get started. Now, let's continue. The following Saturday, Helene was at the bank when she received an urgent call from Pierre. "Madame Dubois, you must come quickly to your Thomas's snack bar." "What's happening?" "The owner of the snack bar is kicking the boy out. He says he's scaring away the customers." Helene dropped everything and rushed to the address Pierre gave her. When she arrived, she found Thomas being violently pushed outside by a portly man in his 40s. "You stinking kid. How many times do I have to tell you that you can't stay here begging for leftovers? The customers are complaining about the smell." "Monsieur Marcel, I only come at the end of the day when there's almost no one here." "I don't care. Get out before I call the police." Helene felt her blood boil. She got out of her car and walked determinedly towards the sandwich shop. "Excuse me." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. Marcel stopped pushing Thomas and turned around, annoyed. "Do you want something, ma'am? I want to know why you are mistreating this boy." "That's none of your business, ma'am. The kid is bothering my customers." Helene opened her bag and took out a folded piece of paper. Marcel's expression changed completely when he saw the document. "Here is the lease agreement, Monsieur Marcel. I'm the owner of this building." The man turned pale instantly. Madame Dubois, I'm sorry, I didn't know you." In 15 years of renting, this is the first time I've come in person, and I find my tenant mistreating a child in front of my door. "Madame Dubois, I can explain." "No need to explain. The boy bothers the customers." So why not offer him an honest job instead of treating him like an animal? Thomas stood motionless nearby, not fully understanding what was happening, but seeing Marcel stammering apologies to Madame Dubois. From today, this boy will work here as an assistant. You will pay him a decent salary and give him 1 meal a day. Is that understood? Yes, Madame Dubois. Of course, Madame Dubois. No. Thomas's voice rang out. I don't want to work here, and I don't want your pity, Madame Dubois. Before anyone could react, Thomas ran off down the street, leaving Helene and Marcel on the sidewalk. Helene discreetly followed the boy to a narrow alley between 2 old buildings. There, hidden behind a pile of cardboard and some planks, Thomas had set up a small shelter. Crates served as makeshift furniture, and a tarp protected from the rain. Thomas, she called softly. Go away, Madame Dubois. I don't need your charity. May I come in? It's my home. Come in if you want. Helene bent down and entered the cramped space. It was clean and tidy despite the precarious conditions. In a corner, carefully protected in a plastic bag, was an old, yellowed photograph. May I see? She asked, pointing to it. Thomas hesitated but handed her the portrait. It was a young woman in her 20s with dark hair and a gentle smile. She was holding a baby in her arms in front of a modest house. Helene felt the world spin. The photo trembled in her hands. Who is this? She asked in a faint voice. My mother. It's the only picture I have of her. What? What was her name? Marie. Marie Lerou Martin. The name hit Helene like a punch to the gut. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. And your father? Did you know him? No. My mother never talked about him. She just said he was a good man, but that he couldn't stay with us. Helene quickly slipped the photo into her coat pocket and stood up abruptly. I have to go. Hey, my photo. I'll bring it back tomorrow. I need some time for certain things. And Helene hurried away, leaving Thomas shouting behind her, demanding his only memento of his mother. That night, Helene couldn't sleep. The photo was on her bedside table, and she stared at it without blinking. Marie Lerou Martin, the young maid who had worked for her 17 years ago. The woman her son Nicholas had fallen madly in love with. Helene remembered every detail of those tumultuous months. Nicholas was 22 when Marie started working as a housekeeper in the family mansion. She was a simple girl from Normandy, but intelligent and educated. Nicholas was captivated by her from the first day. Mother, I love Marie, Nicholas had declared one December evening. It's a whim, my son. You come from different worlds. It's not a whim. I'm going to marry her. The argument that followed was the worst of Helene's life. She had been a widow for 5 years, and Nicholas was her only son. The idea of him marrying a maid seemed impossible to accept. The social differences, what the family friends would say, the future of the business. If you marry that girl, I will disinherit you, Helene had threatened. Then so be it, mother. I choose Marie. Nicholas packed his bags that very night. Before leaving, he handed Helene a letter. When you change your mind about what really matters in life, I'll be waiting. Helene never read the letter. In her anger and hurt pride, she threw the envelope in the trash without opening it. She also fired Marie the next day, paying her 3 months' salary to disappear from Nicholas's life. Marie tried to explain that she was pregnant, but Helene refused to listen. She paid an additional sum for the young woman to return to her hometown and never come back to Paris. Nicholas searched for Marie for months, but she had completely vanished. Eventually, he went abroad, and Helene never heard from her son again. She only received a postcard from London 5 years later, saying he had gotten married and was doing well. Now, holding the photo of Marie with a baby in her arms, Helene finally understood the magnitude of what she had done. She had separated her son from the woman he loved. She had sent away her pregnant daughter-in-law. And for 16 years, her grandson had grown up on the streets of Paris while she lived in an empty mansion. The next morning, Helene returned to the alley with a folder of documents. Thomas was sitting on a crate, eating a piece of bread he had probably received from a local shopkeeper. I brought your photo, she said, handing him the portrait. Thanks. I thought you were going to steal it. Thomas, I have to tell you some things, but first, answer a question for me. Did your mother ever tell you where you were born? Here in Paris. What? And did she tell you how she met your father? Thomas stopped chewing his bread. Madame Dubois, why are you asking me this? Because I think I know who your father was. The boy swallowed his piece of bread with difficulty. What do you mean? Helene opened the folder and took out several old photos. One of them showed a young man in his 20s, tall and dark-haired, with a smile that looked strangely like Thomas's. This is my son, Nicholas. He fell in love with an employee who worked for me 17 years ago. Her name was Marie Lerou Martin. Thomas took the photo with trembling hands. This man, he looks a lot like me. And look at this. Helene showed another photo. Nicholas and Marie together in the mansion's garden. She in a simple dress and he in casual clothes. Both were smiling at the camera as if they wanted to keep that moment a secret. My mother, Thomas murmured. That's really her. Your father had to go on a business trip when he learned Marie was pregnant. When he returned, she was gone. He looked for her for months, but he never found her. And where is he now? Helene felt a sharp pain in her chest. I don't know. He went abroad, and we lost contact a long time ago. Thomas looked at the photos as if he were watching a movie of his own life. Finally, he looked up at Helene. And you are? Your grandmother. The words hung in the air between them. Thomas blinked several times as if to wake up from a dream. My grandmother? Yes. And why did my mother never tell me? Helene took a deep breath. It was time to tell the most painful truth. Because I prevented her from doing so. When I found out she was pregnant, I paid her to leave and never come back. Thomas's face transformed. Surprise gave way to anger, then to pain, and finally to a coldness that pierced Helene's heart. What did you do? I was wrong, Thomas. I was completely wrong. You destroyed my mother's life, and mine too. I know, and there isn't a day that I don't regret it. Thomas stood up abruptly, throwing the photos on the ground. Do you know why my mother went hungry with me when I was little? Do you know why she worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay for medicine when I was sick? Helene felt tears stream down her face. Thomas, because of you, because of your prejudices, my mother was far too good for this despicable family. You're right. I was terrible. And now what do you want? For me to forgive? For me to accept being your beloved grandson? I just want a chance to repair the harm I've done. There's nothing to repair, Madame Dubois. My mother passed away 2 years ago. She will never see that I've discovered the truth. Dear listeners, if you like this story, please leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Let's continue now. Helene felt her legs tremble. Marie had received the ultimate forgiveness from her son. Ow, how did she pass away? Pneumonia. In the public hospital. I tried to find money for a private doctor, but Thomas couldn't finish his sentence. Helene instinctively moved closer, but he stepped back. Don't touch me. You had 16 years to come forward. Now it's too late. In the following weeks, Helene tried a discreet approach. She found out where Thomas ate, where he washed, where he did his laundry. Without invading his space, she began to leave little things he might need. A new blanket, some fruit, a pair of sneakers in his size. Thomas always returned them. One cold June morning, Helene found Thomas coughing violently in an alley. There was blood on the handkerchief he used to wipe his mouth. Thomas, you need to see a doctor. I'll be fine. This isn't just a cold. It's not your problem. Yes, it is. You're my grandson. I don't have a family. But his cough worsened every day. Helene discreetly hired a private doctor to observe Thomas from a distance. Dr. Fournier came to see her on a Thursday afternoon, looking worried. Madame Dubois, from what I've been able to observe, the young man is showing symptoms of a serious lung infection. He needs tests and immediate treatment. He refuses my help. Then you'll have to force him, because if he continues like this, the complications could be severe. The following Saturday, Helene found Thomas passed out in the alley. He had a high fever and was breathing with difficulty. Without hesitation, she carried him to the car and told Pierre to rush to the hospital. Thomas woke up 2 hours later in a private hospital bed, with an 4 in his arm and Helene sitting by his side. Where am I? At St. Louis Hospital. You lost consciousness. I can't afford to pay for this. I've taken care of everything. I don't want anything from you. Thomas, you have bacterial pneumonia. Without treatment, it can be dangerous. The young man tried to get up, but he was too weak. "You will stay here until you've recovered," Helene said firmly. "Then, if you wish, you can leave and never see me again." "Why are you doing this?" "Because you are my grandson, and because your mother deserved better in life." During the 10 days of hospitalization, Helene spent almost all her time at the hospital. Thomas was too weak to argue, so he accepted the care in silence. Helene read books to him, brought him homemade meals from her cook, and little by little, told him family stories. "Your grandfather was a doctor," she confided one afternoon. "It was he who founded the cardiology clinic that became a reference in Paris. And what would he have thought of having a homeless grandson? He would be proud to know that this grandson has the same courage as him to help people in danger." "You're idealizing the situation. I'm telling the truth. When you saved my bag from that thief, you did exactly what your grandfather would have done." On the 8th day of his hospitalization, a woman of about 60 appeared at the door of the room. It was Madame Claudine, who had been employed by the Dubois family for over 20 years. "My God," she exclaimed upon seeing Thomas. "Madame Claudine." Helene stood up. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see how my husband's operation went." "But my goodness, Helene, this boy is the spitting image of Nicholas at his age." Thomas looked from one to the other, sensing there was more to discover. "Claudine, this is Thomas. He is Nicholas's grandson." The woman's eyes widened. "Yes." Madame Claudine approached the bed and took Thomas's face in her hands. "You are Marie's son. You knew my mother?" "Knew her, my boy. I'm the one who taught her how to make the chocolate cake Nicholas loved. She was a sweet, hard-working young girl." "Claudine, Helene, you can't imagine how much Nicholas suffered when Marie disappeared. He cried for months. He said he would search for her, even underground." Thomas looked at Helene with a new expression. For the first time, there was something other than anger in his eyes. "He really loved her?" "Loved her." Claudine laughed through her tears. "That boy was crazy about her. He said he would marry her even if the whole family was against it." "And why didn't he keep looking for her?" Claudine glanced at Helene, who gave her a discreet nod to continue. "Because your grandmother told him that Marie had left of her own free will, that she wanted nothing more to do with him." The room fell silent. Thomas was processing this new information while Helene struggled with the guilt that had been eating at her for 16 years. "You lied to my father too?" "Yes," Helene whispered. "I lied to everyone." The next day, when Thomas was allowed to leave the hospital, he made an unexpected proposal. "I want to see the house where my parents met." Helene could hardly believe it. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but that doesn't mean I've forgiven you." "I understand." The Dubois family home was in resurface, an elegant 1940s building surrounded by well-kept gardens. When the gate opened and Thomas saw the house for the first time, he was impressed by its size. "My mother worked here for 8 months. She took care of the cleaning and helped in the kitchen." They entered through the main door, but Helene insisted on also showing him the service entrance through which Marie arrived every day. "This was her room," Helene said, opening a door upstairs. A simple but comfortable room with a single bed, a small wardrobe, and a window overlooking the garden. "And here," Helene opened another door in the hallway. This was Nicholas's room. Thomas entered the room that had been his father's. It had been left exactly as Nicholas had left it. Medical books on the shelves, tennis trophies, college photos, and on the bedside table, a photo of Marie smiling in the garden. He kept a photo of her for years, until the day he left for London. Thomas picked up the frame and contemplated the image of his young mother. It was the same sweet smile he remembered from his childhood. Did he have other children? "I don't know. We completely lost contact." "You can't find him?" Helene hesitated. The truth was, she knew exactly where Nicholas was. She had hired a private detective years ago and found out he was living in London, working as a cardiologist in a public hospital, and had never married. But admitting it would mean revealing that she could have reunited the family at any time. "It's complicated. You know where he is, don't you?" Helene couldn't lie, looking her grandson in the eyes. "I know." "And you never told him about me?" "No." "Why?" "Because I was ashamed of what I had done and afraid of his reaction." Thomas put the photo back on the table and turned to Helene. "I want to talk to my father." That night, Helene called London for the first time in 12 years. It was 11 p.m. in France, 5 a.m. in London. Nicholas picked up. "Hello." The voice of her son, even after so many years, moved Helene deeply. "Nicholas, it's Mom." A long silence followed on the other end of the line. "Mom, what's wrong? Is someone hurt?" "No, my son, everything is fine. I have something very important to tell you." After 12 years of silence. "Nicholas, you have a son." Another silence, even longer. "What do you mean?" "Marie was pregnant when she left Paris. You have a 16-year-old son." "Mom, that's impossible. Marie would have told me. She tried, but I prevented her." Helene confessed the whole truth. How she had lied to Marie, saying Nicholas didn't want to know about the pregnancy. How she had lied to Nicholas, pretending Marie had left of her own free will. How she had paid for Marie to disappear. Nicholas listened in silence. When Helene had finished, it took him almost 2 minutes to respond. "Where is my son now?" "Here with me. He wants to talk to you." "And Marie?" Helene felt her heart tighten. "Marie passed away 2 years ago, my son." The suffering in Nicholas's breathing was audible over the phone. "She never knew I hadn't abandoned her." "No. My God. My God. Mom, what have you done?" "I know, Nicholas. I destroyed everything. Put my son on." Helene called Thomas, who was waiting in the living room. The young man took the phone with trembling hands. "Hello, Thomas." Nicholas's voice was filled with emotion. "Dad." They stood for a few seconds, not knowing what to say. Finally, Nicholas broke the silence. "How are you, my son?" "I'm fine now. I'm Fina. I didn't know about you. I swear I didn't know." "I know. Grandma told me everything." "Your mother, what was she like? Do you remember her?" "Yes. She was very kind. She worked hard to raise me." Nicholas was crying on the other end of the line. Thomas could hear him clearly. "I'm coming back to France. I'm taking the first available flight. Don't leave your life because of me." "Thomas, I spent 16 years looking for your mother. I won't spend another day away from you." 2 days later, Nicholas landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Thomas was more nervous than he had ever been in his life. Helene was also tense, not knowing how the reunion with her son would go after so many years of separation. When Nicholas appeared in the arrivals hall, Thomas recognized him immediately. He was exactly like in the photos, but with graying temples and a few expression lines. Nicholas saw Thomas and stopped. He gazed at his son for a few seconds, taking in every detail, then he walked slowly towards him. "You look so much like your mother," he said, his voice choked. "And like you too." They embraced right there in the middle of the airport while Helene watched from a distance. It was the moment she had destroyed 16 years earlier, finally coming to fruition. Dear listeners, if you appreciate this story, please leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get started. Now, let's continue. During the following weeks, Thomas divided his time between getting to know his father and managing his conflicting feelings towards Helene. Nicholas had rented an apartment in Saint-Germain-des-Prés so they could be together, but Thomas didn't feel ready to live between four walls after years on the street. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my son. Why did you never come back to France before?" Nicholas sighed deeply. They were walking in the Bois de Boulogne on a Sunday afternoon. "Because I was angry with your grandmother, and I was proud too. I thought that if she didn't want to see me anymore, I didn't want to see her either. But I missed you all every day, especially your mother. You really loved her more than anything in the world. When she disappeared, I almost lost my mind. I hired a private detective, put ads in the newspapers, searched in all the hospitals and public registries in Paris. And you never imagined she was pregnant? During our last argument before she disappeared, Marie told me she had something important to tell me, but we argued before she could speak. Then, when she disappeared, I always wondered what it was." Thomas stopped walking. "She was going to tell you about me. Probably. And because of my stupid pride, I never knew." They continued to walk in silence. Thomas was digesting all this information when he noticed a strange commotion near the lake. A well-dressed man in his 50s was discreetly taking pictures of them with a long focus lens. "Dad, that man is photographing us." Nicholas looked in the direction Thomas indicated. "It must be a journalist." My return to France has caused some comments. What kind of comments? Nothing serious. It's just that I inherited a part of the family business when my grandfather passed away. And now that I'm back, Nicholas didn't finish his sentence, but Thomas understood. There were inheritance issues at stake. The next day, Helene received a visit from a man who introduced himself as Dr. André Dubois, a distant cousin of Nicholas. Helene, we need to talk about this whole situation. What situation, André? This boy who appeared claiming to be the family's grandson. Thomas is Nicholas's son. There's no doubt about it. Perhaps. But there is no legal proof, and frankly, it seems very convenient that a street kid appears just when Nicholas returns. Helene felt her anger rise. What are you implying? I'm saying that anyone can train a child to pretend to be the relative of a rich family. Scams like that are more common than you think. André, I knew Thomas's mother myself. I know it's true. And how can we be sure that you haven't been deceived as well? Helene, you're getting older. You could be manipulated. The conversation became more and more tense. André made it clear that he would legally challenge any recognition of Thomas as an heir to the family. There was a lot of money at stake. The medical equipment company founded by Helene's father was worth millions. I will file a lawsuit to contest the paternity, he threatened before leaving. Do what you want, André. The truth will always come out. But Helene was worried. André had political connections and powerful lawyers. He could make life for Thomas and Nicholas very complicated. A few days later, malicious articles began to appear in tabloid newspapers. Street kid claims to be millionaire's grandson. Family scam. Youth tries to pass himself off as an heir. Thomas was devastated when he saw the headlines. Dad, maybe I should disappear again. I don't want to cause you problems. Thomas, you are my son. You're not going anywhere. But these articles, they are lies paid for by André. He is afraid of losing the inheritance. Nicholas decided it was time to take legal action. He hired one of the best lawyers in Paris and requested a DNA test to definitively prove paternity. Dr. Renaud Savage, the lawyer, explained the situation. The test will settle the question of paternity, but even by proving that Thomas is Nicholas's son, André could contest other legal aspects. How so? Asked Helene. He could claim that Thomas was abandoned by his parents and has lost his inheritance rights, or that he was not registered as a Dubois. These are technical details, but they can complicate things. The DNA test was carried out in a private clinic in the center of Paris. Thomas was nervous, even knowing the result would be positive. What if it's negative? He asked Nicholas while they waited. It won't be. You are my son. I feel it in my heart. But if it's negative, you are still my son. A piece of paper doesn't change feelings. The result arrived in a week. Paternity confirmed at 99.7%. Nicholas hugged Thomas, his eyes filled with tears. It's official, my son. But when they went to celebrate with Helene, they found the house surrounded by unknown cars. André was in the living room with 3 lawyers, spreading documents on the coffee table. Ah, there you are. Perfect. We can settle everything at once. What is going on here? Nicholas asked. I am filing a formal contestation of the inheritance. Even if the boy is biologically your son, legal issues invalidate your rights. Dr. Savage examined the documents André had brought. They are invoking abandonment of a minor. They claim that you left the country knowing about Marie's pregnancy, leaving her without support. That's false. I didn't know she was pregnant. Prove it, André said with a wicked smile. The situation was becoming serious. André had prepared an elaborate file, exploiting the fact that Nicholas had left the country right after the family argument. He even had false witnesses, claiming to have seen him arguing with Marie before her disappearance. Furthermore, André continued, the boy grew up on the street. This shows family negligence. A person neglected by their parents cannot be considered a legal heir. Thomas listened to everything in silence. Finally, he stood up. All right, I renounce the inheritance. Thomas, Helene, and Nicholas exclaimed together. No, Dad, I don't need this family's money. I lived 16 years without it. I can continue like this. But my son, what I wanted was to know my father. And now that's done. That's all that matters. André was taken aback. He hadn't expected this reaction. Well, that simplifies everything. It simplifies nothing, said Helene, standing up. Thomas can renounce the inheritance, but that doesn't change the fact that he is my grandson, and I can bequeath my assets to whomever I want. Helene, Andre, you're so afraid of losing money that you forget what's essential. This boy is family, and we don't abandon family for money. That evening, Helene called Thomas and Nicholas for a private discussion. I want to make a proposal. What proposal, Mom? I'm going to transfer a portion of the company's shares to Thomas. Not as an inheritance, but as a lifetime donation. Andre can't contest that. Madame Du Bois, I said I didn't want it. It's not to spend frivolously, Thomas. It's to do something useful. What do you mean? Helene, open a file filled with documents. These are underused family properties, empty buildings, unoccupied land. With these resources, you could create something important. Thomas skimmed through the papers, impressed by the number of properties. What do you suggest? That you set up a project to help other young people in your situation. Housing, education, dignified work. The idea touched Thomas deeply. During his years on the street, he had seen so many young people get lost for lack of opportunity. Like a foundation? Exactly. Under your mother's name, the Lerou Institute. Nicholas looked at his mother, surprised and proud. Mom, that's a brilliant idea. It's my way of honoring Marie's memory and giving meaning to our mistakes. Thomas remained silent for a few minutes, thinking, I will accept on one condition, which is that Monsieur Andre participates as an administrative advisor. If he understands business so well, he can help make sure it works. Helene and Nicholas exchange a surprised look. Thomas, Andre has been very hostile because he is afraid and feels threatened. But if we give him an important role, his attitude might change. Are you sure? No, but it's worth a try. Family disputes only cause suffering. I know that better than anyone. The following week, Helene summoned Andre to a meeting. When she explained Thomas's proposal, he looked visibly embarrassed. You want me to help you? Yes, Thomas said. You have business experience that I don't, and you know the family better than I do. But I said horrible things about you. You said them because you were worried about the family. I understand that. Andre remained silent for a long moment. Finally, he looked at Thomas with a new expression. You're really not interested in the money, are you? I'm interested in doing something useful with it. And why do you want my help? Because the family must stay united, and because two heads are better than one. Andre agreed to participate in the project. In the months that followed, he became one of the greatest advocates for the Lerou Institute, using his contacts to obtain support from businessmen and politicians. The Institute's first center was inaugurated 6 months later in a former family property in the Belleville district. Thomas had insisted on keeping it simple. Clean but not luxurious dormitories, a refectory with good and plentiful food, equipped classrooms and professional workshops. On the day of the inauguration, more than 200 people were present. Politicians, businessmen, journalists, and especially young people from the streets that Thomas had met over the years. Friends, Thomas said in his opening speech, this place is not a luxury hotel. It's an opportunity. Those who want to stay here will have to study, work, and follow rules. But in exchange, they will have the chance to build a dignified life. Among the guests was Madame Claudine, who had become a sort of godmother to the project. She approached Thomas at the end of the ceremony. Your mother will be very proud, my boy. Thank you, Madame Claudine. And you know what? I brought you something. She handed Thomas a yellowed envelope. What is it? A letter that Marie left for Nicholas before she left. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment to give it to you. Thomas opened the envelope with trembling hands. His mother's handwriting, which he recognized perfectly, covered 2 pages. My dear Nicholas, when you receive this letter, I will already be far away. Your mother came to talk to me today and explained that our situation was impossible. She is right. We come from different worlds. But before I leave, I must tell you something very important. I'm expecting a child from you. Our baby will be born in a few months. I know this could complicate your life even more, so I will not ask you for anything. I will raise our child with all the love I have, and I will tell him that he had a good and honest father who did not abandon us out of malice, but because circumstances did not allow us to stay together. Nicholas, if one day you want to know your son, I will be waiting. But if you prefer to continue with your life, I will understand too. Love is sometimes not enough to overcome all obstacles. I will take care of our baby, I promise you. With all my love, Marie. Thomas finished reading with tears in his eyes. Nicholas, who had read over his shoulder, was also moved. She knew I was a good man, Nicholas whispered, and she kept her promise. She raised me telling beautiful stories about you. Thomas carefully folded the letter and put it in his pocket. Father, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you still love my mother? Nicholas looked his son straight in the eyes. I will always love her. She was the great love of my life. Then let's do something for her. What? Let's create more institutes in other cities so that no poor mother has to see her child in need. Nicholas hugged Thomas. Of course, my son. Let's make sure your mother is always in our memories. 2 years later, the Lerou Institute already had 5 centers in Paris. Thomas had obtained his baccalaureate through an accelerated program and was now studying management at a private university. Nicholas had resumed his medical practice in France, offering free consultations at the institutes. Helene, at 72, had found a new meaning in her life. She spent her days visiting the centers, talking with the young people, and organizing fundraising events. One Sunday afternoon, all 3 were in the garden of the Neuilly-sur-Seine mansion when the phone rang. Helene answered and returned with a strange expression. It was a journalist from L'Express. She wants to do a cover story on Thomas. On me? What? It seems the Institute has become a national reference. Governors from other regions want to replicate the model. Thomas felt uncomfortable with this attention. He still considered himself just a boy who had been lucky enough to find his family. I don't want to give an interview. Why not, my son? Because I haven't done anything extraordinary. I just used the family's money for something useful. Thomas, said Helene, you have transformed your pain into a cause. That is very rare. Grandma is right, approved Nicholas. Many people become bitter after trials. You became more generous. It was my mother who taught me that. She used to say that when you help someone, life becomes lighter. That night, Thomas dreamed of Marie. She was smiling, wearing the same dress as in the old photo, and telling him she was proud of him. You have honored our family, my son. Mom, I miss you every day. I know, but look at what you have built. Your father, your grandmother, even your cousin Andre. Everyone is working together. It wasn't easy to forgive Grandma. Forgiving is difficult, but it's the only way to move forward without that weight on your heart. Thomas woke up with his dream still vivid in his memory. For the first time since he had found his family, he felt a deep peace in his heart. The following Monday, he decided to accept the interview for the magazine. He wanted the story of the Lerou Institute to spread, to inspire others to transform resources into opportunities for those in need. The article appeared under the title, The Boy Who Became a Bridge. It told the whole story, from the averted robbery to the creation of the institutes. The photos showed Thomas working with the young people, Helene organizing events, and Nicholas treating patients for free. The impact exceeded their expectations. Entrepreneurs from all over the country contacted Thomas to support the expansion of the project. Politicians wanted to associate themselves with the positive image of the Institute. Thomas, we have a proposal from the governor of province, Andre announced at a meeting. He wants to create 10 new branches there. With what means? A public-private partnership. The government provides the land, and local businesses finance the construction. And what would be our role? To transfer the model and train the teams. It would be like a social franchise. Thomas liked the idea. In 2 years, the Lerou Institute had become a national network with 40 branches throughout France. During a trip to inaugurate an institute in Lyon, Thomas met Julie, a 22-year-old social worker who helped young people in difficulty. A graduate of a public university, she dedicated her life to social causes. Your work is inspiring, she told him after his conference. Thank you, but I'm just doing what anyone would do. That's not true. Many rich people just prefer to give money and forget the problem. You get really involved. They talked for hours that evening. Julie told him that she had lost her parents at a very young age and was raised by an aunt. She knew the pain of abandonment, and that was why she dedicated herself to helping other young people. "Have you ever thought about working with us?" Thomas asked. "What if we open a branch here? You could coordinate it." Julie's eyes shone. "Seriously?" "Very seriously. We have the resources for another 50 in the Southwest." 6 months later, Julie moved to Paris for intensive training at the headquarters. Thomas set her up in a small, comfortable apartment near the Institute. During the weeks of training, they grew closer and closer. Julie had a practical and benevolent way of dealing with the young people that impressed Thomas. She knew how to be firm when necessary and comforting at the right moment. "You have a special gift," Thomas said one afternoon. "It's not a gift, it's experience. I know what they feel because I've lived it. Still, it's special." One evening, after a particularly trying fundraising event, Thomas and Julie were walking in the Bois de Boulogne. The conversation flowed naturally between them. "Thomas, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Have you ever thought about having a normal life? A house, a family, that kind of thing?" "Yes, but I'm afraid." "Of what?" "Of not knowing how. I grew up without a family model. What if I don't know how to be a husband? What if I don't know how to be a father?" Julie stopped and looked at him. "Thomas, you reunited a family that was separated for 16 years. You transformed anger into forgiveness and pain into a reason for living. I think you know very well how to build a family." They kissed right there in the middle of the park under the light of the street lamps. It was Thomas's first kiss at 19. Julie was also moved. "I've never felt this way about anyone," she whispered. "Me neither." In the months that followed, Thomas and Julie became inseparable. She returned to Lyon to coordinate the opening of the new branch, but they talked on the phone every day. Thomas went to the Southwest whenever he could. Helene watched her grandson's romance with joy. In a conversation with Nicholas, she commented, "Julie is perfect for Thomas. She has the same social devotion and a big heart." "Like Marie," said Nicholas. "Thomas has chosen a woman who resembles his mother." "Is that good or not?" "It's perfect. It shows that he values character above all." At Christmas that year, Thomas asked Julie to marry him. He proposed during the Institute's Christmas party in front of all the young people supported by the project. "Julie, will you build a family with me? A family that would also include all these boys and girls?" "Yes," she cried, moved. The wedding was simple but emotional. It took place in the garden of the family home with 200 guests, most of whom were young people from the Institute's employees and some personalities who supported the project. Thomas insisted that the priest mention Marie during the ceremony. "I would like to dedicate this moment to the memory of Marie Lerou Martin, who taught me that true love is the one that multiplies when you share it." After the wedding, Thomas and Julie settled in a simple house in the Marais. Thomas had refused Helene's offer to buy a private mansion. "We prefer a simple life, Grandma. A house that's too big is a lot of work and distances us from people." Helene respected their decision, but insisted on providing all the appliances and furniture for the new house. 2 years after the wedding, Julie became pregnant. Thomas was delighted with the news, but also nervous. "What if I don't know how to be a father?" "You'll be a wonderful father," Julie reassured him. "Look how you take care of the young people at the institutes." "But that's different. A child is a responsibility forever." "Thomas, your father didn't have the chance to raise you, but despite that, you grew up to be a good person. And now you have him as an example. Our son will be lucky." Marie Dubois Lerou was born on a spring morning, weighing 3.5 kilos. Thomas took his daughter in his arms and cried as he had never cried before. "She has your mother's eyes," said Helene, moved. "It's true, and she will know the whole story of her great-grandmother." Nicholas was radiant to be a grandfather. At 55, he finally had the chance to experience the full fatherhood that had been denied to him with Thomas. "Now I could do everything I couldn't do with you," he told his son. "You will, Dad, but without spoiling her too much. Promise." The Marie Lerou Institute continued to grow. For its 5th anniversary, it already had 60 units in 15 regions. Thomas had become a national reference in social projects and received invitations to give lectures at universities and companies. During one of these lectures at the Paris-Sorbonne University, a student asked a question that touched Thomas. "Have you ever regretted forgiving your grandmother?" Thomas thought for a few seconds before answering. "Never." Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or pretending that the harm didn't exist. It means choosing not to carry the weight of anger forever. "My grandmother did terrible things, it's true, but when I forgave her, I freed myself, and she had the chance to redeem herself. But she destroyed your childhood." "She destroyed it, yes. But if I had remained a prisoner of the past, she would have destroyed my adult life as well. Forgiving was a gift I gave to myself." The answer was highly applauded by the audience. After the conference, several students came to discuss their own family difficulties. Thomas realized that his story inspired not only young people on the street, but anyone who had experienced family conflicts. He decided to write a book recounting his entire experience. From a Street to Reconciliation was published the following year and became a national bestseller. Thomas donated all the royalties to the Lerou Institute. At the book launch, Helene gave a moving speech. "This book tells the story of a boy who taught me the true meaning of family." Thomas could have chosen hatred, but he chose love. He could have chosen revenge, but he chose forgiveness. "I destroyed his childhood, but he built a better future for thousands of other young people." The audience rose to applaud. Thomas hugged his grandmother on stage. "Thank you for giving me a second chance, my grandson. Thank you for being willing to change, Grandma." 5 years after Marie's birth, Thomas and Julie had a second child, Nicholas Marie Lerou. The name paid homage to both the grandfather and the great-grandmother. The family grew, happy and united. Thomas divided his time between the institutes, his family, and some consulting missions for governments interested in his model. Helene, at 80, remained active in the project. She had created a special program to help young mothers in difficult situations. "It's my way of honoring all the mothers who didn't have the chances I had," she explained. Nicholas also remained devoted to the institutes. He had set up a free medical care program that benefited not only the young people in their care, but also their families. Andre had become chairman of the board of directors and had made the institute a financially sound and transparent structure. His entrepreneurial experience had been crucial for the national expansion. "You know," he said to Thomas during a meeting, "when I met you, I thought you were a scammer. Today, I know that it was you who saved us as a family." "How so, Uncle? We were a rich but empty family. You gave meaning to our lives." One Saturday afternoon, Thomas was in the garden playing with his children when he received an unexpected call. It was a journalist from a global news network. "Mr. Thomas, we are producing a documentary on innovative social projects in Latin America. We would like to include the Lerou Institute. Why are you interested in our work?" "Because it's the only project we know of where a beneficiary became a leader and achieved systemic results. You don't just help young people individually. You have changed the way France deals with this issue." The documentary was filmed over 3 months. The cameras followed the daily life of the institutes, interviewed young people who had been helped, employees, and the family. The result was a 1-hour film broadcast in dozens of countries. The international repercussion earned Thomas invitations to give lectures abroad. American universities wanted to study the French model. African governments inquired about adaptations for their context. "Thomas," Julie said one evening, "do you realize that your story inspires people all over the world? It still seems surreal to me. I was just a boy selling candy at a red light. You were a boy with a huge heart. The situation has changed, but the heart remains the same." For the 10th anniversary of the Lerou Institute, a large party was organized at the Paris Expo Porte de Versailles. More than 5,000 people attended. Young people helped by the institute's employees, supporters, authorities, and personalities. Thomas took the stage for the main speech. At his side stood Helene, Nicholas, Julie, and their 2 children. 10 years ago, I was a street kid who prevented a robbery without expecting anything in return. Today, I am here surrounded by the family I always dreamed of, and I see thousands of young people building their own success stories. The audience applauded warmly. But I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about a woman who never had the chance to see all this. Marie Lerou Martin, my mother. A large photo of Marie appeared on the giant screen behind the stage. My mother taught me that love is the only force capable of transforming pain into hope. That family is not just those with whom we are born, but those who choose to stay by our side. That educating a child is planting a tree that will bear fruit for generations. Thomas paused, visibly moved. Marie, wherever you are, I want you to know that your son has honored your teachings and that thousands of other young people will have the opportunities you gave me. The hall rose for an ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Tears shone in many eyes. After the party, the family gathered at the mansion for an intimate dinner. Helene had prepared a special surprise. Thomas, I have something for you. She handed him an old wooden box. What is it, Grandma? Open it and see. Inside the box were dozens of letters, photos, and documents. Thomas immediately recognized his mother's handwriting. Where did you find this? Madame Claudine kept everything that Marie left in her room when she left. She gave it to me yesterday, saying it was time for you to have it. Thomas went through the letters carefully. They were written to Nicholas, photos of them together, and even some recipes she had jotted down. In one of the letters, Thomas found something that moved him deeply. Dear Diary, today I found out that I am expecting a child with Nicholas. I am scared, but I'm also very happy. I don't know how he will react or how his family will accept it. But one thing is for sure, I will love this baby more than anything in the world. And if he grows up to be even half the man his father is, I will be proud. I promise that no matter what happens, I will raise my child to be a good person. I will teach him that love is stronger than fear, that family is built with tenderness, and that it is always worth helping those in need. My child will know love, even if I have to give it to him alone. Thomas finished reading with tears streaming down his face. Julie, who was reading over his shoulder, was also moved. She kept all her promises, Julie whispered. She really did, Thomas agreed. And now I'm going to keep mine. What promise? To continue to multiply the love she gave me. That night, Thomas dreamed of Marie again. But this time, she was not alone. At her side stood a man Thomas recognized as his maternal grandfather, who had died years before. We are proud of you, my son, said Marie. You have honored our family, added the grandfather. Are you okay where you are? We are at peace. And you? Thomas looked around him in his dream. He saw the reunited family, the institutes functioning, thousands of young people building a better future. I'm at peace too, Mom. Finally, I am at peace. When he woke up, Thomas knew he had found his place in the world. He was no longer the abandoned little boy selling candy at the red light. He was a man who had transformed his pain into a reason for being, his anger into forgiveness, and his loneliness into a large family. At the breakfast table, Helene watched her grandson play with the children while Julie set the table. Nicholas was reading the newspaper but paying attention to the children's conversation. It was an ordinary family scene, but one she knew was extraordinary given the journey they had all taken. Thomas, said Helene, may I ask you a question? Of course, Grandma. Have you truly forgiven me? Thomas stopped playing and looked her in the eyes. Grandma, I haven't just forgiven you. I thank you. What do you mean? If you hadn't done what you did, I wouldn't be who I am today. The pain taught me compassion. The need taught me humility. The loneliness taught me the value of family. Helene felt a lump in her throat. And if I could go back and change everything, I wouldn't let you. Because our story, with all its mistakes and successes, has created something beautiful. How many families manage to reunite after so much time? How many people have the chance to transform suffering into love? You are too wise for your age. I learned from the best teachers, life and love. Julie came over and kissed her husband's forehead. That's why I fell in love with you. Because you transform everything you touch into something better. It's because I learned that love is the only thing that grows when you share it. At that moment, Marie Dubois Lerou ran into the kitchen, followed by her brother Nicholas. Daddy, Grandma Helene said she's going to teach me how to make a cake. And she said she's going to teach me how to play chess, shouted Nicholas. Thomas hugged his two children, feeling immense gratitude for being able to offer them everything he never had himself: a united family, unconditional love, and the certainty of being loved. "You are the most important things in Daddy's life," he told his children. "More important than the Institute?" asked Marie. "The Institute is Daddy's work. You are Daddy's heart." Helene watched the scene with a smile. At 82, she finally understood the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't the money she owned, but the family she had been able to bring together through forgiveness and love. Nicholas, reading the newspaper, came across an article about the Lerou Institute. The report mentioned that the project had already helped more than 10,000 young people throughout France, and that the success rate in social reintegration was 85%. "Thomas, look at this," he said, showing him the article. 10,000 young people," Thomas murmured. "Each with a story, a family, a future. Your mother would be proud," said Nicholas. "She is proud," Thomas corrected. "I feel it every day." End of the story. So, what did you think of this story of love, forgiveness, and family? Tell us where you're watching from, and if you think Thomas made the right decisions. Leave your sincere comments on how forgiveness can transform lives. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more moving stories.